Chapter 31. Abaddon rushed out of the cavern. Had Jennifer been conscious, she would have known that he was headed for the healing shrine. After taking out Timothy, he would defeat Drew Baker as he brutally cut through buildings, roads, trains, and people with his ill-purchased power. Of course, Jennifer was not conscious. She was bleeding out on the floor of the cavern. In fact, almost everyone was unconscious and bleeding from severe lacerations and piercings caused by Abaddon's energy beams. Against all odds, Victor Lee regained consciousness. He felt as though his shoulder were on fire, and blood oozed out of his wound quickly. He knew that there was a hole in his torso, but he felt only numbness where blood leaked onto his dark coat. He looked over to Jennifer and saw her wounds. A tear escaped his eye and rolled down his cheek. He looked around to the others and found them in similar circumstances. Sig had a gaping wound in his chest, and Victor thought he was dead. It pained him to think about how the one who had remained so optimistic and hopeful had been cut down by his oldest friend. Sig had believed they were being guided by destiny. Another tear trickled down Victor's cheek as he thought about how cruel destiny had been to them. It no longer seemed they had been sent to defeat the destroyer. It was their destiny to help him get started on his murderous rampage. They had been used to help create the very being that had made their lives miserable. As he looked around, hoping to find something that he could use to make the situation less bleak, his eye caught a glimpse of something shimmering in the low light. It seemed to call to him. As he focused on it, the pain in his arm lessened. He began slowly crawling toward the sparkling light. His eyesight blurred with tears, but he pressed on. He wondered why he was bothering, but his body seemed to move almost on its own as he slowly got closer to the source of the light. He squinted, but the gleam of the object seemed to distort its shape in Victor's eyes. He finally reached out with his hand. It was cool to the touch, and he picked up the object. Suddenly he recognized that he had been drawn to the divine key that Daniel Young had cast aside as he became Abaddon. It was the Heaven's Breath key that he had found. He wished that he could use it to heal his friends. He turned and looked at them, all either dead or unconscious. To Victor's surprise, the key began to glow brightly. If he had seen himself in a mirror, he would have noticed that his own eyes had begun glowing. Light swirled around him, and searing pain gripped his torso and his shoulder. Victor buckled and fell on his face in agony, but the flesh that had been torn apart by the destroyer's beam began weaving itself together, and even some of the blood that had soaked into his dark coat seemed to climb its way back into the wounds from which they had oozed. After a few moments, the key stopped glowing. Victor stood up and realized that he had been completely healed. While he felt some surprise that he had been able to wield the power of a divine key, he felt greater urgency to help his friends. He sprinted to Jennifer and put his hand on her head. Light swirled around her body as her wounds mended and her breathing returned to normal. He laughed as tears of joy and gratitude poured out his eyes as she opened hers. "I thought I'd lost you," whispered Victor. She felt to the place where Daniel had cut through her body, but found it completely healed. "How is this possible?" asked Jennifer in shock. Victor shrugged. "The others," said Victor as he realized he might be able to save them. He rushed over to Lizard and put his hand on Lizard's head. Victor's eyes glowed. Jennifer gasped in shock and admiration as Lizard drew a deep breath and coughed. Victor rushed to Sig, and in a few moments he was opening his eyes. "What happened?" mumbled Sig as he slowly regained consciousness. "Don't speak yet," said Jennifer softly. "Recover your strength." Jonathan and then Kirana were healed next. Kirana grabbed Jonathan's hand as intense pain filled their bodies. In a few moments their wounds had closed and they breathed deeply. Kirana and Jonathan suddenly realized that they were holding hands and awkwardly let go and turned away from one another. Lucas and Stephanie were after them. Lucas groaned, but Stephanie expressed pain in her eyes. The piercing beam of Abaddon had destroyed her tablet, and she had nothing to aid her in speaking. She decided it was just as well, since she had no idea what to say. She had not paid attention to what her divine key was trying to tell her. On the other hand, Row 82 had killed her mother. Her confusion and frustration erupted into a deluge of tears. If she had been able to make a sound, she would be sobbing. Lucas rubbed her back compassionately, but said nothing. Victor ran to Row 82 and placed his hand on the augment's head. After a few moments, Row 82 gave an ear-piercing shriek and sat up. He looked towards Stephanie and saw her weeping. He rubbed his head awkwardly, unsure of what to do. He did not blame Stephanie at all. He would not have trusted himself had their positions been switched. Within several minutes, all of them were able to stand. Victor put the chain that held the Heaven's Breath key around his neck and walked back to Jennifer's side. No one seemed to know what to say. Sig was still shocked that his close friend, who had seemed to value life, had ended up being the one that exploited life more than anyone else in history. "Max Gray and Amanda Madsen," coughed Lizard. Victor looked to a crevice at the edge of the cavern and found Amanda Madsen pierced through the heart. "Those are the places where we found the keys," whispered Lucas in amazement. Victor used his key, and the wound in her chest bound itself back up, but she did not begin breathing again. Victor continued to try to heal her, but he soon realized that she had been gone too long. Wanting to do all he could, he climbed up the slippery wall where Max Gray had been killed. His attempts to help Max also proved to be in vain, and he sighed in disappointment. Heaven's Breath was a miraculous tool, but it could not raise the dead. He slowly made his way back down to the others. "What now?" whispered Lucas as he breathed heavily. It was obvious the healing process had taken a toll on all of them. "I think the paradox problem is resolved," said Victor. "We cannot simply go back in time and change the past." "So what was the point in coming here?" asked Kirana. "The tales about the destroyer I heard indicated that he leveled cities and cut the moon, but not that he set up some great empire," said Victor. "I think we still have to stop him." Sig smiled as he thought about Victor's words. "That's right," said Sig. "The destroyer disappeared suddenly." "And you were taking to mean that we should go up against that thing that cut us down instantly?" asked Row 82 skeptically. "Also, he seemed completely immune to our weapons." "This effort will require all the divine keys," said Victor. "The keys of omniscience will tell us where he is, why he is there, and what he will do. The keys of omnipresence will help us get there. The keys of omnipotence will allow us to defeat him." "But I've never been able to use my key," said Kirana. "And we don't have the heavenly shield," said Row 82. "But I know where you will be able to find it," said Jennifer as her eyes lit up. Hearing the confidence in Victor's voice finally took away the gnawing feeling that she was late. For the first time since she could remember, she felt like she was in the right place at the right time. "Where is it?" asked Lizard. "I can teleport there." "No," said Victor. "We need to stay together. The fact that the council was already fragmented made this age the perfect time for Abaddon to strike. Whatever preferences or differences we may have or have had, they must be put aside here and now. I do not believe the world can be redeemed reluctantly. It's all or nothing." "All!" exclaimed Sig enthusiastically. "I'm all in. We helped make this mess. We should help clean it up. Humanity should not be relegated to scraping life out of a destroyed world." "I'm not giving up now," said Jennifer as she smiled at Victor, "and I don't feel like we are too late to stop him." He smiled back at her. "I think we are all in agreement," said Jonathan confidently. "If we couldn't stop the destroyer from awakening, we can stop him from ruining the world. I don't know if it's possible to prevent all the destruction that will come in our time, But I will not let him get away with using us, said Lucas. Stephanie gave a thumbs up, indicating she was willing to help. And even if my key doesn't work, then I'll find another way to put that traitor down, said Kirana stubbornly. I'm in, too, said Lizard with a smile. Hunting demons is always the right choice. Everyone turned to look at Row 82 to see what he would do. I have never believed in any destiny other than survival of the fittest, said Row 82 slowly. I was not the most fit, and I was not supposed to survive. But you did, said Victor. Yes, agreed Row 82. And it was because you picked up and used that divine key, Heaven's breath. Everyone survived because you, against all reasoning, found a way to use that key. Answer me, Victor. How are you able to use a key when the one who was chosen to use it was a traitor? Perhaps it is because he was a traitor, said Victor. That's not it, said Row 82. A person cannot simply pick up a key and use it. There was a pause as Victor thought about how to respond. Victor is not just any person, said Lucas at last. Several of us have seen him in visions with our keys. What does that even mean? Asked Row 82. I don't know exactly, admitted Lucas, but I don't believe it is coincidence. It was as if I heard the key call me, said Victor softly. Row 82 recalled his experience when Lucas Flynn had handed the key of perception to him. That is precisely how I felt when I first touched the key of perception, said Row 82. It was as though I was compelled to take it, even though at the time I thought it was blasphemous. I knew I was meant to have it. He looked Victor in the eye. I agree to participate in your efforts, said Row 82. Victor smiled. Then let's go, said Victor. Let's save the Golden Age. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation of Relegated Book 1, Wake of Ruin. This story was written and narrated by Brett Jensen. This story is copyright 2015 by the author Brett Jensen. This story represents a work of fiction, and any similarity to persons living or deceased is coincidental.